Hi there, thanks again for joining this YouTube channel where we're talking through my past sketchbooks. The one that I'll be discussing today is sketchbook number 4. So this one covers November 2017 to May 2018, and we're in full colour mode now, Posca pens galore, and I'll be discussing New York trips and Lisbon as well. So subscribe and leave some lovely comments, and thanks again. So sketchbook 4, so this one covers November 2017 to May 2018. And really by this stage we are dealing with full colour. There are occasional pages where I'm still mixing it up or trying to mix it up with the Caran d'Ache pencil crayons. But really essentially we're dealing with a large part of this book is London based. I think my only travel in this one is to New York. I had a brief sort of long weekend there. So we're looking at quite a lot of sketches from museums actually, Wallace Collection, the V&A, the British Museum. Particularly through the winter months, they're very handy because they are free. They're amazing places to be in. There's always something to sketch, some kind of artifact, whether it's the Elgin marbles or something else to kind of get those kind of creative juices flowing, if you like. And also as well with this sketchbook, I'm dealing with composition, as you'll see as I walk through this, either sort of having fun with the composition. This is a good example of the V&A where I'm painting up little patches of colour before I leave the house. And then once I get to the V&A, I kind of know that I want to draw some figures, statues and busts, really documenting as many as I can. Being playful with the composition, whether it's through colour or actually trying to figure out a different composition from the norm, whether it's a really iconic building like St Paul's Cathedral, for example. This is a good one because it's such a huge sculpture. It's a copy of Michelangelo's David that they have in the V&A. So I was just sat directly underneath it on one of those fold-up stools. Just using a black pen, again just a block of yellow colour that I did before I left. And the accuracy on this one is really key. Just really wanted to get in, and you can see where I've kind of fudged it a little bit, where I've gone back over with the yellow pen afterwards. But it's kind of there. And it was a fantastic angle as well. Really good viewpoint. You can see I mentioned earlier about the pencil crayons. And one's in more detail as well. This is a ritual crown from Nepal, so I spent quite a bit of time on this one. Such amazing things, amazing objects. Yeah, some compositions don't really work out. This is Cutty Sark in Greenwich, and maybe for the past 10 years they have this glass kind of atrium greenhouse thing that they've put to protect the hull because it's been damaged by arson attacks and fire in recent years, and they've spent quite a lot of lottery money on this. But this is a composition that didn't really work out, but sometimes they don't. I wasn't really that happy with it, but it's a sketch nonetheless, and it was a nice afternoon spent in a great location. This one's a really memorable one for me. Again, just for the composition and the foreground background colour pens that I've been talking about, but also, and you'll see in the sketchbook as well, documenting the city that I've been living in, or did live in, for over 20 years. And central London, just as in any big city, they're always renovating, knocking things down, but building things, building huge skyscrapers. So this is from the end of 2017, and I can imagine 4 or 5 existing behind the gherkin here, as we call it. So it's great to document these moments. British Museum again. Quite a rare Posca pencil crayon moment. That's a house plant in my old house. So this is Nunhead Cemetery. Again, I think I've talked about this in previous videos, but this was just around the corner from me in southeast London. Just an amazing cemetery, lots of overgrown gravestones. So, you know, you're dealing with a lot of architecture, a lot of different headstones, lots of nature, lots of growth. So these were really nice afternoons spent, again, just taking a little fold-up stool, sitting there. Me again, just experimenting both with colour and composition, just having a real fun afternoon in the British Museum again. I think there's quite a few sketches in museums in this particular book, because it's, yeah, we're dealing with early 2018, so we're dealing with winter time. And just for those months, probably from November, late November to sort of early March, it's really bitterly cold outside, so you just kind of readjust and head into your nearest museum. Or even places like train stations, if you just wanted an afternoon or a couple of hours of sketching people, having a couple of pages of quick sketching. You just have to adopt different methods. So yeah, we have quite a few in the British Museum. So many different wonderful artifacts that you can sketch. So that's a typical view, looking from Waterloo Bridge back to the city. And again, just documenting that moment in time. This is what I was talking about earlier, about having a different viewpoint, a different composition. You know, there's so many different adaptations and different sketches of a particular place like St Paul's Cathedral in London, and I just really wanted to try something different and just have a different viewpoint. So you have intense detail on the left hand side, and then the rest of the page is left blank, and you have a tiny bit of detail, the rest of the city there. So it's really about, you know, I've got the style down by now, and I know what pens I'm using, and I'm getting to grips with those, and I'm very satisfied with them, and I'm gaining confidence. So really the other aspect that I really wanted to concentrate on was if I was going to be drawing an iconic building or a piece of architecture that people know and love, and they've seen in so many different films and photographs from other people, I just wanted to document it in a slightly different way. And this is another good example. I used to walk past Westminster Abbey on quite a few occasions, and notice this little this little sort of pathway, if you like, this little viewpoint looking through other buildings. So a lot of the times there's no real need or reason to draw the whole thing, whether it's Buckingham Palace or Big Ben or Houses of Parliament, if you just get the essence of and a particular viewpoint just to make it more interesting. And there's so many different parts of London to sketch. This is looking towards, again, Houses of Parliament, looking towards Westminster Bridge. This one didn't particularly work out. It was one of those very bitterly cold days. I think this was early February. These two sketches together in the morning, and by the time I'd finished this one, I couldn't feel my fingers. So, as you do, you find the nearest pub and have a pint of Guinness to warm yourself up. This is an interesting one as well, talking about compositions and really really pushing myself to do something a little bit different. This is Piccadilly Circus, and there's a department store, quite a famous one opposite, called Lily White's, that sells sports goods, and there's a stairwell, and this is the window frame, and this is the lettering to Lily White's, and then through that. So I stood there quite a few occasions actually. I must admit, I went back to this spot because it's quite a detailed sketch, maybe twice on different occasions, just to document it because it was so interesting. So I'm really having a play around with composition at this stage. And this one as well, Horses of Helios, a water feature sculpture just around the corner from Piccadilly Circus. I was really pleased with this one. I think it was the composition more than anything. So I'm kind of flitting in between New York, this is the Metropolitan Museum, and the British Museum. Sometimes I leave pages blank and then come back to them, so they're not necessarily always in a particular order. This is the Metropolitan Museum as well, again in New York. It's really being playful with composition again, and marker pens. I particularly like this one for some reason because I think the pen was running out and it just made an interesting mark on the page. And again, documenting, this was Canary Wharf, early 2018. Documenting buildings, skyscrapers that were being erected. Again, there's probably 4 or 5 more in the background by now. This was 4 years ago. New York again. I wasn't particularly happy with this one. I think this statue was in a similar colour. I think it was in red, so I went over it while I was still actually over there, before I posted this. Went over it with a darker colour, just to kind of bring it out from the skyscrapers behind. Grand Central Station. I really liked this one. I had some breakfast just round the corner, and then before I headed out for the day, just popped into the station and witnessed all the crowds either coming into the city or going out of the city. Most of them are coming into the city. We're talking about 9-10 o'clock in the morning. I just decided to use one colour pen and really just have some fun with it. My only objective was to fill the page, and I think it took me about half an hour. So that was a really nice experience. I remember that fondly. Another one from New York. Yeah, this one, as I mentioned before, I really like my films. I'm a bit of a film buff, and the Sergio Leone film, Once Upon a Time in America with Robert De Niro, and I was determined to find this particular spot, and I always like to do a bit of research if I go on a long weekend somewhere. So I eventually found it and documented it. I think if I went back now, I would improve it slightly, but I'm fairly pleased with it. And again, we're dealing with early February or late February in New York, so it is bitterly cold. And this is back in London, drawing people. So I'm really getting into drawing people by this stage, and I'm thinking heavily about different places where I can sit or stand and not be in too many people's way. Because the thing about being an urban sketcher is that there's no real escape. If you're a photographer, you can come up to someone and take a photo and then just walk away and not have any eye contact. But if you're an urban sketcher, you have to sit or stand in a particular spot for over 5, 10, 20 minutes more, and you're making yourself a little bit more vulnerable. So it's really me getting used to crowds, I think, because it's all very well to be sketching things like St. Paul's Cathedral. You can sort of immerse yourself into that sketch for as long as you need to. But I think with people in train stations, coach stations, anywhere where people are sat or stood for a certain length of time, there's always going to be those moments where they know what you're up to. And I've never had any complaints, I've never had any issues, anyone coming up to me saying you can't do that. I think on the whole people don't mind being sketched, and it's obvious what I'm doing. But it's one of those things for a lot of sketchers, I think, to actually conquer as you're going along. And as soon as you've cracked it, it fills you with a lot of confidence, I think, knowing that you can be in any situation and get the sketchbook out, whether it's quite a large sketchbook or a small sketchbook, whether you've got loads of pens, whether you've got a fold-up stool, whether you get your watercolours out and you're there for a couple of hours, knowing that you have that self-confidence to actually to do that. And this is another good example, the National Gallery. They're very quiet atmospheres, but they're perfect for people sketching, because these people that are coming in, tourists, are often stood in groups. They're looking at a particular painting. They're either doing that or sat down having a bit of a break and you know, looking at their phones, texting people. So really I'm having some fun by now, because I'm gaining confidence in drawing people, getting an essence of a group of people or a certain person, and then just trying to mix it in with backgrounds. Horse Guards Parade. I really like this one actually. This one only took me about 20 minutes, and to draw any animal that's constantly moving. This one wasn't moving too much because they're not meant to, the horses, but I managed to sort of capture the essence of this one in particular with the crowds. And that's all I needed to say really. It was a very quick sketch. I didn't need the background that sort of leads up to Trafalgar Square. I just wanted this as the dominant part of the sketch. And it's really colourful, and that's all I needed to do. So I was really happy with that. And I think sometimes that's all you need to do. It's not always about filling a whole sketch page with a sketch. Houses of Parliament. Again, documenting. I think they finished all of the renovations now quite some time ago. But back in early 2018, the Houses of Parliament and Big Ben were going through a massive renovation process. So there was scaffolding everywhere. But this was at the very beginning, where you couldn't see the tower at all. Trafalgar Square, again, just mixing it up really, overlapping. I really like overlapping sketching people, whether it's kind of large or small, and you're sort of filling in the gaps by drawing other people, little bits, and you're not really committing too much time to each person. You're really just getting the shape of someone, whether they're texting or whether it's the shape of the head or the hair. This one was just off the Mall, St James's Park. Really interesting sculpture. That one did take quite a while. I really fully committed to this one, and it's quite rare for me to use black Posca pens nowadays, but I thought I'd try something different, and then grey for the trees that are through the railings to give that illusion of depth. Queen's House in Greenwich. Greenwich was one of my favourite destinations. It was just a very short bus ride away from where I lived in southeast London. And Queen's House is amazing. Just messing about a little bit with in the British Museum, drawing sphinxes. Trafalgar Square. I think it started to rain with this one. I fully intended to finish this sketch, but you can see sort of raindrops started to appear. More or less, I'd more or less finished this one anyway. But again, it's a really good example of me trying to capture a really good composition, making it more visually stimulating for me as well as anyone else, you know, once I've posted this. And this is Lisbon. So this was April 2018. And I think the Airbnb apartment that I was staying in was just here. So I had this sort of top floor here. And I noticed when I came out for breakfast every morning, walking down these steps into the town, once I look back up, it's a typical, what you would imagine from a typical street in Lisbon. So I decided to document it. And it was a lovely morning. I had plenty of people, tourists or even locals, walking past wondering what I was doing, having a very long conversation with an American couple that were so lovely. So it's documenting a place and also immersing yourself. I say this so much, but it really is such a great experience to immerse yourself into a particular environment and the people that you meet as well. Bellum Tower. I think I have some footage on my Instagram post of me sketching this with a GoPro. I borrowed a friend's GoPro, but I'm not very technically minded, so the battery ran out after 15 minutes, so it captures a little bit of me putting this composition together. But it was an interesting experiment nonetheless, something that I will come back to at some stage. But that was a lovely afternoon. Another sculpture there as well. Forgive me, I can't remember the name of this one. But that was another one that I came back to much later. This one didn't really work out. Just, I think it was the composition. I was sat on a wall here in the castle, and this is the top half looking down to the bottom, and I thought it would make an interesting composition. I think the technique that I was using was okay, but just having this wall being very central to the composition, if this was moved over slightly either this way or that way, it would have made a difference. But as it was, it's not a very strong image. This is right at the top of the hill there, looking back down onto the city. And this one I didn't plan actually. This was a really nice moment, just outside the cathedral, just having a quick coffee and really having a sit down. I've been walking around most of the day, and I realised that this winding street where the trams come round and people sat having a drink would make an interesting sketch. And this one didn't take too long, so that's another reason why I quite liked it. I often like those moments where things just sort of come together. It doesn't always have to be planned. Back in London, the Blackfriar pub, one of my favourites, just for the architecture alone. But again, I just wanted to pick a particular part of it. So I'm getting into researching my home city by this point, the city that I've been living in for so long, before I head out. Just little interesting bits of architecture. It doesn't have to be a huge building, really kind of channeling in on a certain part. Just on the Thames path there, I thought this one would make a really nice composition looking back on the city of London. And actually I think this is one of the first occasions I'm using 3 colour pens. So figuring out the very darkest I can use, which is blue here, and the pebbled beach because the tides come out, and Tower Bridge in red, and then in pink, which is only a slight difference, we have the walkie-talkie building. So compositionally I really like this, but also this is one of the first occasions where I'm using, I'm kind of upping my game, if you like, to 3 Posca pens. Shad Thames. That was a nice afternoon. Really trying to document this sort of avenue, this walkway, where they used to offload goods and carry them across these little bridges here. And people, again, I've done this quite a few times in my sketchbooks, even in the recent sketchbook number 9, where I'm just having a bit of fun, close-ups of people, capturing the essence of certain people and having them from all kind of different angles. It's just a really nice way to fill up a couple of pages and engage yourself in a particular area, whether it's Covent Garden or Trafalgar Square. And that one is the end of that. So that is sketchbook number 4. So thanks again, everyone, for joining this little talk. It's been fun for me as well. So don't forget to subscribe and leave some lovely comments. And I'll see you for the next one. Thanks again.